Right, hey guys, welcome to the lesson after you've received your brief. So, as you hopefully remember, the brief of this entire module, actually, as a sort of design challenge, will be to create your own wizard or witch in a mannequinized version. So we're not really going to create a character, right? Because it's more advanced. We'll first have to go through anatomy and all of that. So we're just going to create a mannequin with a certain pose, and then we're going to dress that mannequin, okay? But believe it or not, even this is almost like 80% towards character design. If you can do this efficiently, trust me, you're like 80% towards that, character design, creature design, whatever it is. Okay. And the same goes for landscapes or props. If you can simplify things, you are more than halfway there. So in this lesson, what we'll do now is as the lesson suggests, is we're going to find a pose. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a couple of poses that I'm just going to find these. I haven't prepared this, but I'm just going to look for some poses that could fit a witch. And then afterwards, in the next lesson, I might continue after this lesson and find the ideal pose. But again, I just want you to kind of see the gist of what I'm trying to do when I'm finding these poses. And again, of course, this is a lot of this you've been doing in the beginner's course, right? So that's why this course builds on top of the beginner's course. And that's how I always want to kind of structure these courses. When you do a course, every lesson builds upon the next lesson. When you do a new course, that course builds upon the previous course. Okay, so what I'm now just going to do is I'm going to try and find some poses based on the mood board that I made, right? Because that's the idea. That's what you needed to do in the previous lesson. And so now that's what I'm going to base some of my gestures and poses on. So we can kind of do this in two ways, which I'm going to try, right? I'm going to try and find more of a neutral pose, let's say, where we have, more of a standing character, and that standing character will the thing about it is it will be easier to show the entire character, so to speak. So I won't have to figure out too much for shortening or volumes, or well, maybe some volumes, but there's nothing too dynamic going on, so that's not going to really mess with my perspective. And it's also going to be a nice way, which you usually do in most character design presentations, is it's a nice way to kind of showcase your entire character, right? Because you want to show it off, right? You want to show off your costume design, you want to show off the attitude a little bit, the facial expression. So if you have something that's too dynamic, I mean, a lot of detail gets lost, but a dynamic pose is also sometimes very cool to showcase the potential of what the character can do, or to really show its true personality, right? So it's kind of a mix and match, right? So I'm going to try and do both. Just going to find my mood board for a second. All right. And again, we are now entering a design phase. What that means is we don't need everything to be perfect from the get-go. So you can experiment, right? You can experiment a lot if you want to. Still stick with kind of a mannequin proportion, just because that's the idea of this course, right? So I'm gonna go for more of a female character, so I'm gonna exaggerate those proportions a little bit. But don't really think or assume that you have to nail this pose from the start, right? You can look for it, you can erase things, you can redraw them, Again, this lesson is called finding the pose, right? Not nailing the pose. So I'm starting off with a fairly neutral pose, right? And this will just give me like an opportunity to kind of see what my character could do or could be doing. So my initial idea here is I'm basing this a little bit off reference. This reference is from Rachel Bradley, by the way. I love some of her ref packs. She has some really cool ones. And so what I usually will do, of course, so and this depends on from artist to artist, right? But I will usually incorporate the costume already in the pose because I want to see what the silhouette looks like. And most designers will do this, right? We will find that silhouette in combination with the pose and the mannequin. I don't want you to do that, okay? I want you to really just focus on getting like a good mannequin pose, and that's it. Because then we're going to dress it, right? We're really going to take more of a structural approach instead of doing everything at once. Doing everything at once, again, drawing is just like a juggling act, is only something reserved for people that are proficient at what they do. So if you're a beginner, which if you're in this course is highly likely, you're not proficient, right? You're trying to get proficient, which is great, but you're not yet proficient. So all we're trying to do now is find some cool poses. All right, I'll maybe enlarge this a little bit, like this. Let's see if it still makes sense on the recording. So whether you're working digitally or traditionally, that really shouldn't matter. If you want to adjust poses, you can erase, right? You can redo poses. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't, right? You don't have to nail a pose from the get-go. It's more about just finding what you're looking for. That's all we're doing. So now we might want to try a little bit more of a dynamic pose. So here I'm imagining a witch maybe pointing her wand towards us. And so this will already be a lot more dynamic, of course. And you can you'll instantly, let's say, notice that we'll run into some issues with foreshortening, right? We're instantly covering up things. And so we're going to lose some detailing. That's normal. And again, we're not looking for picture perfect accuracy. Finding the pose, just like thumbnailing, is all about experimentation. maybe this witch also carries a sword. Now, the cool thing, of course, about dynamic poses will be that we can use dynamic drapery. Right? That's why I have those lessons about adding drapery in motion, because this will, of course, add interest to the overall design, because we're opening up that silhouette. Usually with a standing pose, though you will see this sometimes a lot in miniature design, where the designers will still keep a fairly neutral pose just for ease of molding, but they will make the drapery a little bit more dynamic. And again, this instantly creates more interest for the character. But you will have to also assess a little what your skill level is. And based on that skill level, I would suggest you either go a little bit more dynamic, or you keep it, a little bit more neutral or safe, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Okay. Never assume that sticking to your level is a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. All right. So this is one. Then let's see if we can do, maybe we can do like a quintessential, a little bit more of a hovering. Right, so we're looking up at the character. And when you see me do my characters, I start with the head, just because most of the time the head does all the acting for me. Right, and then I'm just trying to find where the hands might be in terms of the acting, because it's always the head and the hands you'll be paying attention to most of the time. Let me see if you can see this in the recording. Yeah, should be fine. So like I was saying, it's always the head, the hands, some of the body gesture that you'll be paying attention to. And so that's where I kind of find my bearings, so to speak, right? So I will start with a head, and then might indicate like something here and here to indicate for me, like, okay, this is where I want the hands to be approximately, and then I just figure it out. And this is a result from doing a lot of these spatial awareness exercises, right? This is where it kind of pays off. And maybe we want her to have like more of an empowering pose where she has one leg up in the air and then another coming down like this. And the reason I'm treating it that way is because I'm thinking like maybe we'll have something very wavy in terms of a cloak or whatever on that side to break up that silhouette, because now we'll have a very narrow silhouette at the bottom. We're opening it up at the top, which also already creates a point of interest, but it also gives me some room to have some wavy clothing on both sides if I wanted to. Just doing a little bit of shading. Again, I do this to get a little bit of my bearing. Also just suggest the type of perspective I'm using. Like this upshot to make this pose feel more powerful. And again, this is usually how I will go about most of my poses. Just as it's because it's, you know, it's something that works for me. It might not necessarily work for you, so you can take it either slower, you can build it up more, you can really get in all the building blocks for your mannequin that you've established in the beginner's course. And if you need to, I definitely suggest that you do that. Again, I'm a little bit more free with how I treat my mannequins these days because it opens up a little bit more potential for me. That's just a personal preference. All right. So this could be a pose, and then we might have like another pose. Maybe it's a back pose of her kind of looking over her shoulder. And maybe it's a different body type. And again, she might have a sword. And this might be like a completely different angle. Let's make it a little bit more feminine. She could have a spark of fire here. Sometimes I also think about lighting, right? Because in this pose, if I were to render it, you know, and she's looking over her shoulder, she's looking at us, something like this, right? Shoulders like over here. You know, something like that. What I'm thinking about, of course, is that if she has that spark of fire or magic or whatever she'll be using in that hand, it will be a nice excuse to create like a rim light on that side of the face when we render her or him, right? You might not see that because my face is covering it. I'll just make it a little bit smaller so you can see. There we go. Now, if you want to start refining your character with a second pass, that's completely fine. I even encourage it, right? Just to get the best possible mannequin before you start dressing it, to get a better understanding of your volume. That's perfectly fine. I definitely encourage that you do that, right? So we'll do one, and then we'll kind of call it a day. So again, all you're still thinking about when you're doing this is the simple forms, right? So if you want to use boxes or you want to use something a little bit more advanced according to your skill level, all up to you, right? You kind of decide what you are comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. But just try to stick to what you primarily taught yourself in the beginner's course, because that will immensely help you just to keep that spatial awareness. Just keep it fresh, keep it fresh in your memory. And just make sure that you don't always confuse one form with another. Now, sometimes, and I will say this, which I do a lot, is I will change my mannequin a little bit. My mannequin is rather modular, because in some situations it serves me better to use one form compared to the other. And that might be when I do a front view, I might treat it different than when I do a twisted view or a back view. So I have, let's say, a couple of bits and pieces for the mannequin that I use depending on the situation that I'm in. But if you want to get the best efficiency, limit those options, right? Especially for the mannequin. And again, we're not yet going for any anatomy indication, so don't bother with it. Just stick to simple mannequinization. Because in all honesty, there's not much more you will need in life. Especially if you're going into more of a design-oriented direction. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Your assignment for this lesson should be crystal clear as well. What you're going to do is you're going to find a minimum of 8 of these mannequin poses that are going to contribute to the overall design of the witch or wizard you're going to create. So again, be honest with yourself. If you're a beginner, try to lean more towards the neutral poses. If you're a little bit more advanced or confident, try some dynamic poses as well with more foreshortening and twisting, just to create more interest in the silhouette and pose itself, and try to make everything in line with, of course, the acting and personality of either a witch or wizard. Okay, so 8 mannequins total. You can start with a rough sketch and clean up. That's up to you, or you can go straight into a cleaner version. Try to make them as clean as you can before moving into the next lesson. All right? Have fun, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.